Good afternoon, everyone. I believe we're on air now. So I want to welcome you to this edition of the EdTech Dialogue. We've been having the program since the beginning of the month. And today, we are highly delighted to welcome the team from Google to the 30 Days of EdTech Dialogue. I guess the moderator is ready now. I can see her trying to connect. Flourish. Yeah.
Good afternoon, ma.
Yeah, good afternoon. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
It's a pleasure to be here. We are gradually wrapping up the 30 days of EdTech. It's been a wonderful conversation. It's been a wonderful discussion from the beginning of August up till now. And I'm sure we've all learned a lot, some surprisingly. So I'm looking forward to a very robust discussion today. Today we have with us two panelists, Mr. Jeff and Mr. Ebuka. And somebody says I can't hear anything. We'll be looking forward to what it is you have to share with us. But first, let's take the national anthem to get us started. 1, 2, go, everybody.
Arise, O
compatriots, Nigeria could obey to serve our fatherland. With love, our strength and faith,
The
name of our heroes past shall never be in vain. To serve with our fatherland, one nation bound, freedom, peace and unity.
Really? Amazing. That song, man. A cacophony of voices. But y'all, welcome everybody. So we are getting started into the program for today. Today we have with us two people from Google who will be taking us through who will be sharing interesting insights with us on the place of technology and how we can make it work for us. In the first session, we were able to establish that it is not something that should be feared. It is not something we should be afraid of. This is something we can make work for us. And in the second live session, we were able to engage some of our students, and we had an amazing session where they shared insights about things that we were not even thinking about. So today we'll be hearing from people who are the front lines, so to speak, building some of these products, building some of these things that we can bring into the education space to make things better for us. So on that note, I'll be introducing to us today. First, we have Mr. Ebuka Ufere. A round of applause for him. Mr. Ebuka Ufere is the Product Marketing Manager of Android and Education at Google. He's the lead for Android retail marketing and education for Google in Sub-Saharan Africa. He has extensive industry experience and he's previously worked with General Electric Nigeria. So welcome with me today with a round of applause wherever you are joining us from, Mr. Ebuka Ufere. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for coming today. Secondly, we have Mr. Jeffrey Bamba. Jeffrey is a graduate of the University of Maryland. the United States, and Syracuse University in New York with a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science and Master's degree in Business Administration. Jeff Bamba has over 20 years of experience in information technology, consulting, and business. He's the founder of InfoSource Data Solutions, an IT consulting firm based in Maryland, United States, with past clients including IBM, HP, and the United Department of Defense. Impressive. He's currently working on an education technology startup called InfoView in Ghana. And they are looking forward to working with private schools in Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and Nigeria. Jeff is a proud father of twin boys and a beautiful girl named Allison. Let's welcome Mr. Jeff Bamba. Thank you, everyone.
We are on now. Sorry?
Okay. So, quick house rules. If you're not speaking for time, you can please just mute your mic so that we are able to concentrate. You can turn off your microphone so that we can hear clearly whoever has the floor at every point in time. So thank you again for joining us today on 30 Days of Education Technology. On this note, I'll be handing over to Mr. Ebuka Ufere. So you have the floor now. Ms. Ogunde, would you like to chip in something? Okay, it's fine.
Please.
So Mr. Ebuka Ufere, you have
yes,
the floor.
we'll just, it's a pleasure to have Ebuka here representing Google. I know that Ms. Bamba is still trying to connect, so we'll wait for him. He's not yet here, but it's principally a day for Google. So let's ride on with them. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much for the lovely intro, and thank you, Yinka. So can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen. Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Awesome, perfect. So just for a quick learning objective, or like just a flow of the way today is going to go. The topic is distance learning and the importance of edtech for Africa's future. And the way I've structured this presentation is just to cover insights on the impact of the pandemic on education, and just some sort of what the general landscape in education looks like with respect to the challenges and opportunities in Africa. Then beyond that, I'll be talking about a couple of our products, programs, and initiatives that are, focused specifically on education and skills training in the region. And on that note, let us get started. So just to kick off, at the peak of the pandemic, well, not necessarily the peak, but when it had been sort of accepted as a global situation, there were about 300 million learners out of school, and there were school closures across 52 out of 54 countries. Now that is a massive, scale of education disruption at such a level that we had never witnessed in the past. There were hundreds of millions of kids out of school. Schools were closed, people couldn't learn, and we suddenly found ourselves in a situation, where we witnessed like a scale of disruption that had never been seen before. And what that sort of, unlocked on a global scale is more of a coordinated initiative, solutions, a couple of people, a lot of people, companies, organizations coming together to work on a lot of solutions and initiatives to drive learning and education and to ensure continuity, despite the massive impact of the pandemic on learners and students in Africa and globally. So sort of like post and during and sort of as we're moving toward recovery, the landscape for education has sort of looked like this at the moment. It's seen a lot of students try to figure out how to stay engaged in class, how to keep up learning from home, keep up being engaged with their classmates, etc. While they sit in the home classroom, which is something they've never done before. It's had teachers try to figure out ways to deliver engaging course content, to keep students engaged through a screen, to work with parents to ensure learning continuity across, and various other things. It's also seeing parents have to step up and be the teachers at home, or be the catalyst to ensure that the students, get them keep up their education. There's a lot of parents that are doing like half and half, homeschooling, trying to ensure their kids sit through webinars, etc. as school has been forced to pivot to. It's also seen school leaders try to figure out new ways to keep their community engaged, to keep their students engaged, to work with the students and the community and the parents just to ensure that people are able to learn from home. I've worked with a couple of schools that do innovative things like providing data for education, like a data bundle for the entire school to be able to access the internet. I've seen schools who like provide devices for all of their kids to be able to come online, because like recognizing the fact that Africa does have a lot of inherent challenges like affordability, people not having access to devices, and just necessarily not being sort of the most the nation or the region with the highest access rather. Finally, what do learners want from education in the COVID era? There's been a lot of studies done, on the impact of EDU on COVID. The data I'm sharing here is from Pearson Institute, and what it sort of highlights is that is kind of the way learners are thinking about education in the COVID era and even after it. So their study found that 86% of people considered the fact that online learning is here to stay. And I think this is particularly interesting because a lot of the schools that I've worked with, at Google and from our and in setting up our products and programs, you've seen like there were a couple of schools who in the past had a hybrid learning system in place and were able to seamlessly transition during the pandemic. And there's a lot of schools who necessarily had to rethink their entire model and start from the ground up, try to figure out how to keep their learners learning and to keep school going in the midst of the pandemic. 67% of people globally, of students of school age rather globally, do also feel that education institutions are not effective at using edtech. And what this calls for is a lot of training, reorientation, upskilling teachers to be able to fully adapt to this new normal and ensure continuity from home. And I think it's the learning experience is different and something that that education institutions and teachers need to recognize. Kids have never had to do this before. It's entirely new, it's entirely unheard of. So, it does call for teachers to upskill themselves, to, take up training, etc., to learn effectively how to keep up learning from home. And beyond that, there's a lot of data globally that speaks to the fact that learning is inequitable for both men and women. I'll share some data in a following presentation that speaks to the number of girls that are educated in Africa and Nigeria versus boys. And 70% of people globally feel that the pandemic will deepen this inequality in education. And what they're calling for is, solutions and measures, innovative ways to boost the participation amongst females and young women learners in the region and in the country. Beyond that, schooling looks very different this year. What I've highlighted on this slide is sort of the stages of school response to the pandemic. And I've based on my research and my work with schools, I've cut this across 5 phases. At the commencement of the situation, schools had to reimagine and rethink learning. This phases 1 and 2 primarily apply to schools that did not have any form of distance learning solution or edtech set up in the past. They had to think about how to, set themselves up, quickly acquire an education solution that would help them to teach virtually, be that Office 365 or, for example, G Suite for Education, which I'll talk more on in following slides. Apart from that, they had to seamlessly adapt. They've seen a case where like they were fully in the classroom 100%, and now they're having to keep students engaged from miles away, and in some cases countries away, as people might have gone home to family, etc. And then where we currently find ourselves now, as a couple of schools are moving towards reopening and trying to figure out how to ensure continuity, is in phases 3 to 5. And this covers reopening. So schools are trying to figure out how to effectively open their doors again and just trying to figure out what exactly the new normal for education looks like. And there's a lot of research that speaks to the fact that a lot of schools are going to move toward the adoption of a hybrid learning model, and hybrid learning cuts across both physical and virtual learning. Beyond that, schools have had to evolve, which is, take their schools from phase 1, from, grade A to grade B, figure out like how to move from where they were previously, which is full physical, to adopting both learning models. And phase 5 sort of speaks to an institution-wide implementation, which is effectively rolling out virtual learning, which would include training and reorientating teachers, training students, parents even, and figuring out how to keep students engaged and effectively learning. There's like a lot of higher ed institutions in the US, for example, that have announced for their classes of 2021 that a hybrid model will be adopted. Like, for example, NYU has 50% of people in a class at each point in time. Most people get the opportunity to attend a physical lecture at least once. And it's sort of also but the rest of the classes and delivery will be done fully online. Now, so speaking, those first couple of slides just did speak to the impact of the pandemic on education and sort of what phase scaled approach that schools are taking to respond and to keep learning up. That notwithstanding, Africa has, as we all know, a number of challenges that are inherent in the country, in the region, rather, in Nigeria as a country as well, that make learning a challenge and make the adoption of edtech and virtual learning solutions difficult. For example, the region has long been plagued by low digital readiness, a lack of focus on edtech, and just the absence of internet access. As at this present day, only 1 in 4 Africans are able to access the internet. This is 300 million people out of a continent of 1.2 billion. This is although we are the second most populous internet nation, but given the scale relative to our population, this is a very low adoption rate. And it just shows that the access to the internet is not democratized, and it's definitely as essential a commodity as it is, it's not available to everybody. Beyond that, there's a terribly low adoption of digital skills. For example, in Sudan, only 4% of adults can use basic computer functions. There's a massive shortage of qualified skilled teachers who are not even fully equipped and trained and upskilled to drive regular learning in schools, much less adapt to this new normal where they're having to make technology front and center in learning and the solutions. As I called out earlier, there's also an equitable access to education in the region and in Nigeria as a country. For example, in Nigeria, over 50% of girls are out of school relative to their male counterparts. And there's a lack of access to technology. For example, in countries like Germany, you find that the digital adoption in the country is as high as 80% versus, say, a country like Morocco, where adoption sits at 56%. And even before the pandemic, there was, at a massive scale, children across Africa were out of school, learning levels were drastically low, and curriculum was in dire need of being updated. For example, there's a lot of data that speaks to the fact that over 50 million Africans remain out of school, and this is 45% of the global out of school population coming from one continent alone. Beyond that, Africans have historically trended very poorly on various global learning measures like the World Bank Index, trends in math and social sciences, and various other measures of learning. And there's a lot of data that also speaks to the fact that curriculum in Africa is in dire need of reform. Since the 1970s, we haven't, the various countries in the region haven't undergone extensive curriculum reform, which is necessary and critical to ensuring that learning is relevant, that the content and curriculum continues to be impactful to students and being able to achieve the necessary developmental outcomes. Another major issue that is lacking in Africa is infrastructure. There's a lot of, across Africa, largely private schools are sort of more enabled and have more standard infrastructure. But a lot of, as shocking as it is, in 2020, a lot of people are learning under trees. A survey conducted by UNESCO revealed that 47% of schools across sub-Saharan Africa were reported to need major or massive repairs and overhauls, and only 13% of buildings were listed as being in good condition. Beyond that, across Africa, and I'm going to speak to sub-Saharan Africa, which, for example, as from a Google perspective, 3 countries, Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa, that we tend to have prioritization of our products and programs. On average, these 3 countries allocated only 13.7% of the national budgets to education in 2020. Now, this seems like just a number, but when you consider the fact that in 2019, the allocation for education was 13.6%. And it sort of shows that, regardless of the growing population, and I'll share, in a couple of slides about how the population of children and learners across Africa continues to skyrocket, the government does not prioritize education or see it as something that requires skilled budgetary allocation, transformative investment, and, and other sort of coordinated solutions and initiatives. Another massive issue affecting education in the region is illiteracy, adult illiteracy in particular. Across sub-Saharan Africa, only 61% of adults are able to read and write with understanding. And when you think about, for example, the global situation we found ourselves in the COVID-19 pandemic, kids are at home, and to be able to learn effectively, they need the support of their parents. And if the parents are not literate themselves, there's absolutely no way that they're going to be able to effectively support or help their kids learn from home. I know I've painted a very gloomy picture. There's it's been data points on the negatives so far, but the outlook is not entirely gloomy and non-positive. There's still a lot of potential within the region, regardless of this, of the current state of education and the state of Africa and the state of access within the region as well. So Africa is the second largest continent in the world. It's home to 1.3 billion people, and this population is projected to double over the next 30 years to reach 2.5 billion by 2050. Now, this is massive when you consider like our population relative to the entire world. Another important fact to call out is that Africa is a young, vibrant, and thriving population of people. It's the youngest region on the planet. The median age of an African in this region across our 54 countries is 20. Now, this is important because you consider the fact that it means that the average African is young, is thirsty for education, is hustling, is either trying to find growth skills or learn various business techniques, etc. And beyond that, even as considering the fact that the average African is young, this youthful population is projected over the next couple of years to continue to skyrocket. There's 41% growth projected for the population of people between the ages of 15 to 25 years old. And when you think about the population of learners specifically, there's a lot of data that speaks to the fact that the child population is set to grow by 170 million to reach 750 million. This is over the next 10 years. And by 2055, Africa will be home to almost 1 billion children, which is 40% of the global total. And what this sort of tells us is that, with this growth in mind, it does call for coordinated action by companies, by governments, by institutions, by nonprofits, and various other industry players to transform the state of African education, as there has never been a more critical time to educate the African child than now. Sort of the growing population also does, speak to the fact that relative to the rest of the world, which is set to see declines over the next couple of years, as the African youth continue to grow and expand and at exponential levels, there's a dire need to transform the terrible state of education and the failing state of things at present. So I know that I've shared a lot of data so far. I'm pretty much a numbers guy, and I really do like to bring a lot of data and insights to my presentation, just so that it sort of sets the ground very well. So what I'm going to share in the next couple of slides is just examples of what successful edtech adoption looks like globally, and the impact it's been able to have on a couple of countries that have successfully and easily adopted. A great example and the global leader across regions is the United States. There's data that speaks to the fact that they have a massive number of their programs being delivered online. Learning for the US is there's online courses has since outpaced physical courses and physical education, and they have millions of students enrolled in online courses. India, for example, and I think this example really resonated with me because India has similar challenges to Nigeria and to Africa in general. It's still a developing and emerging country. It's a country where affordability, like in Africa, across Africa, is a challenge. It's a country where a lot of people live on and below the poverty line. It's a country where education is not easily affordable and accessible, but with their best-in-class online learning programs, they've been able to make learning more equitable and provide access to people who were unable to pay and afford physical education. China is also another great example. They have tens of strictly online learning colleges, which focus on doling out online programs to the community and helping people learn virtually. Beyond that, they have a lot of initiatives focused on improving access to the internet, and which is critical to ensuring people are able to come online and adopt edtech. And there's beyond that. What is really interesting to me in China is that from a lot of these people who have taken strictly online programs have been able to effectively transition into the global workforce and are key players, finding great jobs, achieving great outcomes, growing in their careers and thriving off strictly online education. Building on these examples, I'm going to share a bit about why and what the potential and benefits could be for, for us investing transformatively in education in Africa. One key one is economic growth and poverty reduction. Poverty, affordability, and just the, the general state of people and the socioeconomic rankings are devastatingly low in Africa. And what we found from extensive research is that when kids are educated and effectively, upskilled and go through a strong education system, there's potential for hundreds of millions of people to be lifted out of extreme poverty. Another key point is that a strong and well-educated population could also lead to, the GDP of each particular country being boosted by up to 7%. Beyond that, a great education system could lead to closing the gender gap. And what that could look like is, more women and more underserved people and in getting a great education, being able to find jobs, getting their seat at the table, etc., broadening participation in the labor market, in terms of access to opportunities, in terms of growth potential, just, all of those, amazing things. And now just building on the general landscape, I'm going to talk in the next couple of slides, and this is the last bit of my presentation, and then I will round up and then, take any questions that anyone might have. So what I've done up till now is sort of just set the tone regarding, the pandemic, the general state of education, and just the benefits that lie in successful edtech adoption. Now, within Google in particular, this year and in 2020, we have prioritized education as one of our key areas where, we see a potential to really drive transformative change. This year alone and during the pandemic, we've worked with a lot of our partner network across the region to set schools up at scale and drive education technology adoption through our products like G Suite for Education. We've worked to set up a number of schools across Africa and continue to do more to drive that growth, to enable people to learn from home. We've also invested massively via our skills training programs in helping people, grow, develop, and succeed. For some reason, I think that slide did not load. Sorry, guys, I need to. So this slide is not loading, not sure why, but beyond that, Google has been in the region for over 10 years, and we have a strong presence across Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa. I'm not sure if you can see, what I have on the screen in this mode, but we've made extensive investments across access. For example, through our initiatives like Android Go Edition, we've been able to give millions of people access to affordable internet devices, which help them come online, which help them learn, grow, and develop. And we have a suite of apps that are specifically designed to enable people come online and access the internet with low data and low bandwidth, just taking that access to the internet in the region into consideration. We've done a lot of work in providing access to information, both during and before the pandemic through our products, Search and YouTube. Through Search, we're able to surface, useful information to users to enable them, like for example, in the COVID pandemic, I don't know if who was paying attention to the search homepage, you would find that we would provide middle slot information, like in the middle of the homepage, talking about ways to understand, prevent the pandemic, figure out methods to prevent, etc. Via YouTube as well, we've surfaced a lot of educational content, learning programs, etc. that can help people learn, understand, and grow. Across education, we've made extensive investments in our via Grow with Google skills training program. It's through this initiative, we've trained over 5 million Africans in digital skills. And beyond that, and this year, for example, we've continued to do more by scaling our Grow with Google programs to CS First, helping kids come online and learn computer science skills. We've done extensive work on G Suite for Education, helping schools adopt education technology. And even on the business side of things, from our SMB and ads programs, we've done extensive work to help people advertise and grow their businesses and just be able to, push themselves forward with Google. All right, I'm going to go back into present mode because this should be fine now. I'll talk specifically on G Suite for Education, and I work directly on this product, and this and education in particular are two areas I'm very passionate about. So our G Suite for Education product is our suite of products that aims to empower students, educators, etc., to learn from home, to keep up learning at a distance. Through products like Google Classroom, we're able to have were able to bring the classroom to the home, for lack of a better, term or way to describe things, because students, educators are able to create classes, record videos, and just manage, their class and student body directly from whatever location they might be working from. Our products are easy to use, flexible, scalable, and at the heart of our design is always security, because we do think about the fact that the internet is as wonderful a place as it is scary. There's, if due to breaches, etc., there's a number of ways where kids can be compromised through education. So through the internet rather. So our products are all centered around keeping kids safe while they learn and go to school from home. So I did speak, about GC for Education, and just to highlight a couple of the benefits and features of the product. It's at the head of things. It's collaborative, enables people to, wherever you are in Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, Mauritius, Rwanda, you can work on the same document with all of your colleagues. Beyond that, there's a lot of machine learning features built in, so it's constantly learning and adapting and growing with you and figuring out your patterns and just working with you on documents, etc., and just being able to suggest and provide useful information. By the numbers, there's over 140 million students and educators globally using G Suite for Education as at April 2020. Another great product that I've touched on in briefly in the previous slide is Google Classroom. Google Classroom helps teachers, educators build a virtual classroom, ensure that all their kids are able to learn from home. Through Google Classroom, you're able to grade coursework, dish out quizzes, assignments, homework, or say a teacher, for example, imagine a teacher cannot, make a class today or teach a live class. A teacher can pre-record the class, upload it to Google Classroom, and enable the entire, student body to access Google Classroom. And by the numbers, as of April as well, there's over 100 million people globally using Google Classroom to drive effective home learning. Now, this is one of my favorite products as well, that is in our suite of education products, Google Meet. Through Google Meet's features, you're able to run a virtual video conferencing session or class or presentation, etc. And you can have up to 250 participants in each call. And it's in terms of considering security, teachers are able to remove, say, unwanted participants from a class. They're able to prevent students from rejoining classes after they've already shut down a class to avoid misuse. And beyond that, we announced earlier in the year that our premium Google Meet features were free and available to everyone. Google Meet Premium is, the paid version of Google Meet. And, in response to the pandemic, we made the premium features and all of the, great things packed into the premium version of the product available to everybody for free. And just as a caveat, this is available only until the 30th of September 2020. So if you have not, had fun on premium Google Meets, it's the last month to do so. And just I've spoken to Yinka to share the next two slides afterward, because then you might be wondering, how can I access and kick off my learning journey with G Suite for Education? She will share after the presentation to all the attendees a sign up link through which you're able to go online and access G Suite and figure out best practices for usage. Online as well, we have a lot of tools, resources, trainings, and DIY setup where you can actually go online and learn and figure out how to kick off your G Suite journey on your own. And for those without the tech savviness to set this thing up on their own, we do have an extensive network of partners across Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, across Africa as a whole, that provide training, mentorship, setup, and device deployment for G Suite for Education, and in some markets, Chromebooks as well. So that is primarily it, and I will close and stop for questions now, if any.
Okay, Flourish, I think, thank you very much, because that was an awesome presentation. I know that I saw about 1 or 2 questions here for you.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. Flourish, are you online?
Yes, I am.
Please, could you read out the questions? There are 2 questions. Yes.
You started with a bit of scary statistics, but it's good we had a safe landing, so it's not doom and gloom. But here, let's take a few questions. This is from Junaid. Junaid wants to know, she's curious about how effective low-tech solutions such as SMS lessons and radio are at driving educational outcomes when compared to high-tech solutions such as AR, VR. So she basically wants to know, like, maybe a comparative analysis, like the low-tech solutions versus high-tech solutions. How effective are they vis-a-vis one another? Then to what extent can we move the needle by building on these existing low-tech solutions? So, Ebuka, do you get that?
I do get that. Thank you very much,
Okay,
Junaid,
you're
for the
welcome.
question. So do you want me to take the first one and then?
Yeah, it's fine. It's basically two in one. So, yeah.
Okay. So I think the major issue with low tech solutions, like to his point, that's actually a great call out, because like in this time of the pandemic, a lot of people have had to be scrappy, considering like limited budget and just the fact that edtech solutions are generally, for not edtech solutions, but like, for example, devices. If I did not have a laptop prior to the pandemic, say I had to buy one to keep up some my virtual learning journey, that could be considered to be expensive. So though they are I would say I would consider low tech solutions more of a band-aid versus a solution to the problem, because those work when you in say like in a perfect world where, for example, the parents are, you know, fully able to support the kid's learning journey, or for example the child is able to effectively use the mobile device on their own without parent supervision, without their parents needing to actually, you know, make them focus. But unfortunately, due to the challenges in the region, like as I called out earlier, like adult illiteracy, like for example, the fact that kids are also still figuring out learning from home. So non-visual methods, like for example, the virtual learning method where you're actually able to see the teacher in front of you and engage with your class. Our research has shown that they've not been ineffective. You know, there's studies, a lot of studies have also shown that kids do not have a great learning experience where they have to, for example, access files through WhatsApp or just listening to their session on the radio. So I would definitely consider it a band-aid versus a solution, because it does also drive non-engagement. Like for example, through the radio, I can't ask a teacher a question and teacher cannot respond to me. So what would be a perfect picture would be, you know, full edtech adoption, where you actually bring the classroom to the home, where, you know, I sit in front of you, though we are 1,000 miles away, I can ask you a question and you can respond. We can work together on a document. We can work together on coursework, versus relying on the student to, you know, use this to drive their learning journey independently. I think the second bit of his question was, I might even remember.
About
Yeah.
so the first part was a comparative analysis, and then the person wanted to know, Junaid wants to know that how do we build on the low tech ones and, you know, sort of just bring them up to the standard. And I think you kind of answered that part of the question, because for me, non-visual methods, that term sort of explains things. Like, you typically would see your teacher face to face in a classroom, and if you could only hear the teacher's voice, that ability to interact is no longer there. So, Jonah, I hope that answers the question. Except Ebuka wants to delve into that a little bit more. We have some more questions.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think
Then we also have a
the only
question
thing,
that I answered earlier that I told, so maybe you need to look at this in the chat box under the
I've seen
answer,
that.
something about rural education. So Ebuka will need to tackle that too. Thank you.
I think the only thing I'll add on Janet's question is that I don't believe that those things are the solution. I believe that what Africa needs is transformation, transformative investment, a coordinated, scaled approach to, you know, to disrupt the education sector. I think that is definitely what we need, versus scaling, you know, methods like radio and WhatsApp, etc. Which is why, you know, hopefully, you know, the government does make some strong moves to improve the state of things, but then definitely, like, beyond, there's only so much, say, like corporate and private players can do. Like for example, for tech companies or tech startups, for example, there's only so much that can be done without, you know, coordinated government response as well. So, and next questions, please.
Good, thank you. So Joe Wills wants to know, a rural-based school requires minimum e-learning takeoff. What advice do you propose as a help?
Uh, we lost
Requires
you.
minimal e-learning. I think this person wants to know how minimal e-learning. Okay,
We lost you,
how about now?
Flourish. Please take it again.
Okay, a rural-based school requires minimal e-learning takeoff. What advice do you propose as a help? Like, how do they get started? A rural-based school, minimal e-learning takeoff. How do they start?
Okay, that is so. If I'm trying to understand the question, but let me just sort of give my own interpretation. Like, okay, considering the fact that say a rural-based school does not have the infrastructure in place to hit the ground running with e-learning, how can they like kick off their journey today? Is what I'm hearing.
Yes, yes, yes.
All right. So I think the best way would be a mobile first approach, in my opinion. Beyond the fact that a lot of these edtech solutions require or would be most effective and efficient on a computer system, a lot of these products today, and for example, to speak to GC for Education example, as one good example, are mobile first. So that we found, from our work extensively and from working with schools during the pandemic, that there's a lot of kids that in various schools where they don't have a computer, they can't afford a computer system, but they're using Google Classroom to learn from home. They are taking classes on Google Meet, etc. So they're using docs and calendar and all of those things on their phones strictly. And you might also consider the fact that smartphones, as time has gone and progressed, smartphones are more affordable to the population. Speaking specifically to Android Go, for which I also work on marketing for at Google, is for example, today the cheapest Android Go 3G device retails for around $27. There's devices for converted in local currency, so that's around like 9,000 naira, for example. There's our cheapest 4G device at present retails for around $35. So you can access and buy your own device to kick off your learning journey for as low as $9,000 or $10,000. It might be nothing fancy, but it still,
I
the
think you
product
mean
Android
Naira.
specifically is built to
9,000
get the
Naira.
job done. I hope that answers the question.
I hope so too. So apparently starting with mobile first. I think you meant 9,000 naira, not $9,000.
No, I did say 9,000 naira. I said what I said was $27 initially. Like, for example, I know that that's
Okay.
for Android Go editions, our cheapest device available in the market retails for $27, and converted that's 9,000 naira around.
Okay, so thank you very much for that. I think it makes sense to start with mobile first. Everybody or most people, more people have access to mobile devices than laptops and computers. So we have another question from Shade Onobowale. In terms of age band, she wants to know what age group have adopted the solutions more in Africa. So she wants to know what age groups would you recommend to focus on first in Nigeria, such as pre-K to K-12, 13 to 16, that age range. That translates to nursery, primary, secondary, and tertiary. So she wants to know what age range. So if a person wants to invest in this or wants to start this, what age band would you recommend that the person focuses on at the beginning?
Awesome. Thank you for that great question, Shade. From the extensive work I've done in education and from our research, what we found is that the most potential for impact is in the sort of like primary to high school population, because and to that I would say from the ages of say 5 to 16 plus. And the reason for focusing on that demographic is the fact that at that point in time, kids are still relatively early stage. As far as science goes, and even going to maybe say for biology, for example, in those first couple of years, that is when you have the most potential to make transformative impact on the human brain. For example, from the ages of from five plus. So I can't speak to specific adoption in that age group. But what I would say is, like, for example, the global numbers for that I've shared for GC for Education, Google Meet, etc., would primarily cut across K-12, which is primary to high school. And the reason why I would not, consider focusing on, say, higher ed, as far as virtual tech adoption and that sort of transformative education impact, is because at that point in time, students are more far along in their learning journey. They've already, for example, there's less opportunity and potential to make transformative impact when they're more advanced and they've more sort of like finalized and progressed in their learning journey, almost like fully crystallized. I don't know. I hope that answers your question, Chade.
Yes. So at the early years, it's easier to make transformative change. You know what they say, like when children are still at that level, their mind, you still have, the mind is still like a sponge that can absorb a lot and form itself in a specific way. So we
I
have
really
this,
like that analogy, actually. Thanks.
what did you say?
I said I really like that analogy, actually, the sponge one. Thanks.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you. So we have another question. This is more about scaling. The person wants to know, how do we get this education technology to interior parts of Africa, especially Nigeria? So specifically, the person wants to know, is there any form of partnership with Google? Maybe at
Okay.
institutional or systemic levels, is there any form of partnership?
All right. Thank you very much for that question. What I will say is that, first of all, our products, G Suite for Education, etc., are totally free and accessible to everyone and anyone, and any school can by themselves go online and set up a G Suite Education domain for their entire institution. And in that line, they can also create student accounts, teacher accounts, etc. So the product is not, there is a paid version of the product, but it's not a paid first product. So it's fully available and accessible to everyone. I guess after this session, Yinka will share the 2 slides I have for like G Suite access for information to access G Suite. Beyond that, we have an extensive partner network. Through that partner network, you can, for example, if you were in need of additional training, if you were in need of, further, like even help to say you, though the product is free, you can't necessarily set it up by yourself. You could work with one of our partners across the region who we work closely with to set up yourself on G Suite for Education. That's as much as I can share as regards our, education, access to our education initiatives as present. There's a couple of things that we do have in the works and in the pipeline though, and I'll say in the next, I will not give a timeline to it, but expect some interesting and exciting announcements from us as far as education goes in the very near future.
Well, looking forward, if it's better than free. I mean, I think that, so I'm sure that most people are looking forward to that. And just to reiterate, he mentioned that the G Suite is totally free. And I think that at that level, pretty much anybody at all can, set themselves up for success. We'll be taking our final question for this session. Do you have any suggestions for edtech organizations? Do I understand this question? Not quite sure. State schools do not have as much access to technology as their private counterparts. Do you have any suggestions for how edtech organizations could tackle this problem, or any current examples of solutions to this? I'm not quite sure I understand that, but if you do, please take a shot at it.
I think I did understand it, and thank you very much for that question. So I think in my experience, and this is something I've also seen from the work we've done so far, is that as, for example, considering an edtech organization as one, you cannot tackle the entirety of the challenges on your own. What I would recommend here, and what we've done, in the past on a lot of our skills training programs, products, and initiatives, is trying to work with the government to scale. Because there's as a private org, or as say an edtech startup, there's only so much that you can do. But with the support of the government, etc., on funding, and it might be as simple as delivering a pitch to the right person, etc. Although I do recognize that there's a lot of still bottlenecks and hurdles to cross as regards engaging the government effectively. But I'll say partnerships with, say, the government, with other non-profit organizations that are working to drive transformative impact in this area is one key way. And another thing that I've seen is that, for example, even for a public school to even adopt an education technology solution, a lot of them cannot do it without approval from, say, their relevant ministry or the government point of contact as far as education goes. So you do need to engage them and, you know, work with a broader range of industry partners to drive transformative impact there.
That's correct. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. We have learned a lot. I particularly like that. I know many people have security concerns about education technology, so I appreciate that you were able to address that, and then more parents can have a peace of mind about their children and, you know, how they use technology for the education. So thank you very much. Can we please give
Thanks a lot.
Miss
Yeah.
Bebuka a round of applause? Even in the comment section, please.
Yes. Okay, we want to say a big thank you to so many school owners and teachers and consultants that I can see on the participants list. Thank you very much for being part of our edtech dialogue. I mean, it's been a very robust month, robust discussions all through. Before we go, we have just about 10 minutes to take a presentation from Mr. Bamba, who is going to share his experience with us about Ghana especially. I know that he's been trying to do quite a lot of things with the education community in Ghana, and I'm sure that we will be able to learn from his experience. He was also able to get a deal with the telco companies in Ghana relating to his company. So maybe you just share one or two things with us. We have just about 10 minutes to round up this. Yes, Mr. Bamba.
All right, thank you, Yanka. My name is Jeff. I'm with the InfoView team, and what I want to share with the audience today is a couple of things. The first thing is that I think, you know, thumbs up to Google for making Google Classroom accessible to a lot of schools, because that was very needful. But there was a question that I think one of the audience posted, which was a low tech question. And I want to piggyback on that. So from what we have learned in working with a lot of schools, because we work with a lot of urban poor schools as well as upscale schools. So what we've learned within this COVID period is this. First and foremost, education technology is a great tool for helping with distance learning. However, the schools fundamentally that we've worked with, we worked with a lot of over 300 schools, fundamentally did not understand the different educational technologies and also how to apply them. So let me define that. First and foremost, there's two types of distance learning. There's synchronous virtual learning and asynchronous virtual learning. So if you take Google Meet, for example, where the teachers and students can see each other in real time, that's synchronous virtual learning. If you look at the situation where the teacher have recorded material and posted in the Google Classroom, and the students will absorb or review the material, provide feedback to the teacher, that will be asynchronous virtual learning. Now, from a rural perspective or from a low-tech perspective, I will say that for what we have learned, asynchronous virtual learning is very effective, especially with the connectivity challenges in our part of the world. Because one, in Google Meet, if you are doing real-time communication or real-time teaching, you're going to face connectivity challenge. It's guaranteed, because I've seen over 100 videos of teachers teaching who struggling with connectivity, either on the teacher side or on the student side. So asynchronous virtual learning is something in our part of the world. And I think our last presenter mentioned a very good statistic from India. India, for example, they have the same connectivity challenge. And the reason for some of their edtech solutions working so well is that most of their edtech solutions focus on the asynchronous part of the virtual learning solution, where teachers or the material, pre-recorded video of instructor is uploaded and students can digest that material over time and then be able to provide exercises also online and digest that over time. So as a school, if you are looking at virtual learning solution, Google Classroom is a great environment to support with asynchronous virtual learning. because the teachers can provide the material online and you can absorb, or the students can absorb the content and be able to work on it and provide the response back to the teacher. Now, the next part that I want to stress on is this: you cannot ignore SMS in our part of the world. I think one of the questions that,
Exactly. Yeah.
one of the questions that one of the participants mentioned is that in our part of the world, device, Ekuba made a good, point where device can go up to as low as $27, but $27 is someone's annual salary in some parts of this continent. So, you need to look at SMS, that you cannot ignore it. So whatever solution that is put in place, SMS component needs to be part of it. So from our perspective, for example, at InfoView, what we looked at is that we realized that in an urban area, you have a lot of majority of people having smartphone devices or Android device. However, the moment you go a little bit beyond the urban boundary, or even within the urban poor boundary, you realize that no, they are still using feature phones. So our technology delivers content in both SMS and in email, as well as giving an app where parents who have a smartphone can be able to go in that app, digest the content, or a student can digest the content and upload content, as well as connecting to Google Classroom or to Google Meet to be able to exchange or discuss ideas. So the SMS component is something that cannot be ignored. I heard one presenter mention a while ago, it says in Africa, SMS is king and mobile is a nephew. So as mobile first is a great way to go if you go in an app or platform based, but SMS is king. Bottom line, we need to be able to make sure that we can deliver content via SMS while the generation or the next generation catches up, because they are more in tune or more in line with the skills required to use a smartphone. The other thing I also mentioned from our experience within the last 4 months working with a lot of schools is this: there are a lot of free technology out there, including Google Classroom, but skill set is a major problem, because majority of schools, even though they have access to these free technologies, do not even know how to begin or how to implement it. So we spent a lot of time these last 3 months providing webinars and training for schools as well as teachers on how to leverage these technologies, because we realize that, one, if they can survive, then we can survive as an organization as well. So one, the skill set is a major stumbling block for any adoption in terms of technology and to be able to scale, because one, you have a lot of hurdles. One is a device, two, the skill set. Then three, it's a mindset problem also. And I call it mindset nation. For the many years, we've been in Ghana for the last 4 years providing edtech solutions for schools. And we realized that the mindset of school leaders were based on paper. Now, COVID came into the picture, and all of a sudden they realized that they cannot deliver any information on paper. So they have to go digital. So that mindset is good and it's positive that this COVID has brought, unfortunately, but it will help scale all the edtechs that will come after COVID. So that was a couple of things that I want to add in terms of what Ekuba has shared with us.
Very much. Thank you, Mr. Bamba. Okay, so those were very valid points that you raised. I recall that Ebuka said something about having training partners for people who are not able to get how to exactly use G Suite, or other e-learning technology platforms, especially the free ones. So thank you for that. I know what you mean when you talk about urban poor, because our organization, or a part of our organization, CPE, has been very involved in supporting, well, what some people call low-income schools. But the reality is they are pulling a lot of weight. They are serving lots and lots of families. And the reality of, should we say, poverty on the continent is something that cannot be brushed aside. But I truly get the point that we need to think about leapfrogging and, go beyond. Yes, use whatever we have to use right now, but always have it at the back of our mind that we need to push beyond whatever it is we have at this point. I have thoroughly enjoyed myself. I realized I missed a question that, sort of speaks to me. The person wanted to know about how we can bring e-learning into children need to move. So basically about physical activities and enrichment classes and what most people call extracurricular activities. So I have missed the name. The person wanted to know about how we can bridge that gap since most children are at home learning by themselves now. How do we then deliver physical education or enrichment classes to them when they are just there on a chair in front of a device, in front of a gadget? So if anybody wants to answer that, either Ebuka or Jeff or both of you, we have just very few minutes before we wrap up this session. We are already behind time. So does anybody want to have a go at that?
I'll
It's a
add,
difficult one, right?
yes, it's a difficult one. The truth of the matter is that, for example, for preschools where most of their learning is on rhyme, etc., for kids sitting on the couch staring at the screen, and we already know there's research out there, the amount of screen time kids have affects their ability to concentrate. But in this COVID period, a lot of kids don't have a choice but to focus on the screen. So I will say that it really will boil down to the parent and the child at home, and the school can support that by providing even what do you call it, videos in terms of exercise videos where they can then parents can work with the children at home to partake in terms of the activities that need to happen. But there's no enforcement without the parent in this situation.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Again,
I
we
think
go back to parent involvement.
plus one to Jeff's comment. So essentially, like you've done a lot of justice to that question.
Okay. Okay, so this one technology can only do so much, right? Mrs. Ogunde, your microphone is off. I know you are saying something, but your mic is
Okay.
off.
I said, can we take a last word from Ebuka also? So that
Yes.
just before we close, I know that, thankfully, when the pandemic started, a lot of schools, their first port of call was really Google. And Google had to do a lot of things to rise up to that challenge. So there may be one or two things that Ebuka would love to add that we might have missed. And then I've seen that in the chat, quite a number of people have been asking that will they have access to the slides? Will they have access to this presentation? We will try to put it on our YouTube channel immediately we are done. So everybody will be able to access it. We'll be able to put it on CPE and then various other groups that we manage. So that much more beyond those of us here, others can also know about what we did during this dialogue. So last word from Ebuka.
Awesome. So just to close, I would just say thank you so much, Yinka. Thank you, Flourish. Thank you, TOSSEtech, for the platform. Education continues to be an area that I'm particularly passionate about. I say this a lot, for lack of a better word, I love school. And if I was not, I think about a lot of the time, like if I didn't have to, for example, work to earn a living, I might just spend my life going to different, institutions and amassing degrees. I've thought of this before because I actually do enjoy school. That notwithstanding, what I will say is that to close, it does continue to be a strong passion of mine, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to work on it like directly as part of my core role at Google. And I can say that to close that this is sort of an unofficial statement that not a statement but just an official comment from me that we do continue to think about how we can revamp the landscape, make our products more relevant and helpful and useful to people, and with a priority for Africans and to Africans, taking into consideration our unique challenges. So what I can say is that, in my work, in my day-to-day, I will continue to drive that. And thank you all for listening. So hopefully I speak another time. Take care.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Just before we close, maybe it's good to, I'm not putting you on the spot here, Ebuka, but one of the things that we are planning is that we are actually reviewing ways of supporting the low-cost schools that we do a lot of work with to have access to learning. And that means that we are thinking in terms of going into may be very, very awkward places in very, very poor communities. We want to see how they can learn. So maybe we'll be able to take the conversation further from after we are done. We have teachers, we have people who are already there who will be able to say that at least let's find a way of giving these children some form of education, whether it is a street school, whether it's whatever it is that we're going to use. But we'll really, really love to talk to you about that, as well as Mr. Bamba too. Even though, I mean, Jeff, even though you're not based here, but at least I know that technology is something that cuts across the miles. So we'll certainly love to have you advise us more on how to make a success of that kind of initiative.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely, Yinka. Let's take the conversation offline, and then we can talk about like how we can have joint impact together.
Certainly, we will. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. I have had a wonderful, wonderful time. I'm sure you have too. Just to quickly note, somebody said, Adeni said for parents who want to monitor screen time or manage screen time, that they can try a product called Family Link, and that's a Google product. So I suppose that that's something that you can try if you want to manage screen time for your children. Adeni says, and I believe you must have tried it and must have found it useful. Somebody wants to know Ebuka's full name. Ebuka's full name is Ebuka Ufere. Is that the correct pronunciation?
It's Ufere, yeah. However,
okay. Sorry. Thank you so
Thank you, everyone.
And on a slightly sad note, we've come to the end of 1 month of education technology conversations. I've had an amazing time.
Conversations regularly. So thank you, everyone.
For those who are asking for the slides, you can always check our YouTube channel. The videos will be up in a bit. Even if you are in this session, you know, we've had a lot to listen to, and then you want to reflect and go over it. So please be sure to check out. It's on EduOut Media. Search for EduOut Media on YouTube, and you can find videos of even the previous live sessions. And I'm sure that in a few hours or by tomorrow, you'll most likely find this there as well. Thank you, Mr. Jeff Bamba. Thank you, Ebuka. Thank you, Mrs. Ogonde. Thank you, everyone. Bye.